Welcome to Understanding Resilience, the Brain at War, brought to you by CalTAP, and presented by Swords to Plowshares. We're going to talk about some of the issues that come up, particularly during transition, including moral injury, stress, how your family's doing, and how to build community connections. Service changes you, training changes you, deployments change you, and coming home changes you. Stress is a fact of life, but there are ways to manage it. So you want to check in, especially during transition. What's going on with you? How are you doing? The first step to managing any issue, really, including stress, is to recognize it. So how's your attention span? Are you all over the place? Can you pay attention? Are you having emotional ups and downs? This is really, really common. And are you having physical symptoms, sweaty palms, a racing heart, or even indigestion? Things that you wouldn't necessarily associate with stress and rather think that they're a physical condition. Are you super tense? Are you super alert? Again, particularly after people have come home from deployment, often this is the case. So, you've identified your stress, now you're going to try and manage it. First, you want to relax and slow down. Now that sounds ridiculous to say. Yeah, right, I'm just going to relax. But there are actually tools and methods and practices that you can take on in order to relax and slow down. Think of it like you're training. Manage your time. Make sure that you know what to expect with your day. You write it down, you calendar it. Make sure that you don't put too much on your plate or not enough on your plate. Make sure, to the extent that you can, that time won't catch up with you and unexpected crushes won't come upon you. Exercise. Exercise is not only obviously good for your physical health, it can help you sleep, and it helps you get out that excess energy, that stress, that anger, whatever's going on, in a healthy way. Talk to your doctor. Enroll in VA healthcare or find other medical services. Make sure you talk to them not only about your physical symptoms and how you're feeling in terms of your racing heart, headaches, lack of sleep. Sometimes stress will manifest itself and look like a physical condition, but you and your doctor can talk this out, figure out what's really going on, and figure out the best path for you to build up your health and your resilience and manage your stress. Sleep. Again, this is a tough one. Many veterans report having difficulty sleeping, particularly during transition, but sometimes forever. So again, there are tools that you can use. There are sleep hygiene methods that help you develop a routine that really helps you go to sleep and stay asleep. Things like staying away from your computer and that blue light. Exercise helps, drinking doesn't. Communicate with your family, with your friends, with your doctors. Get that stress out. Don't let it bottle up. If it does bottle up, it has a tendency to explode. And think positively. Now again, this seems like, yeah, right, think positively. Yeah. But think about it in terms of your training. You had goals. You worked towards them. You achieved things. That was positive. That was good. Think about your stress levels and your transition in the same way. Think positively about goals and work towards them every day. Most of all, reach out. Communicate with friends, with therapists, with battle buddies, with vet center staff, with readjustment counselors, your family, of course, your church, workout buddies. Talking really helps. And some of these groups, for instance, vet center staff and readjustment counselors, they are there specifically to work with separating veterans, particularly those who've been deployed or in combat or have experienced trauma. Veteran service organizations. These are great because the people that you're talking to are veterans themselves, and they work with veterans every day. So they know where you're coming from. They know the resources in the community. They can make your path that much easier. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Now we're going to talk about moral injury. This is a concept that has only recently had a name. We've only recently begun to discuss it. But if you think about it, as we go through the material, it is as old as war itself. So again, service changes you, training changes you, deployments change you, and coming home changes you. You might feel shame, guilt, anxiety, anger, purposelessness, alienation, social instability. You might be isolating yourself, engaging in self-harm, drinking too much, using other substances too much. These feelings you have are real, even though you may not be able to name them. Your feelings come from genuine experience, and they deserve to be respected by yourself and by others. It's called moral injury, the emotional and spiritual response to witnessing, engaging in, surviving, being the victim of, or failing to prevent events which transgress core moral and ethical standards. One writer describes it as a profound sense of alienation and abject shame. It is a transgression of pre-war belief systems. The world is safe. People are generally good. Bad things only happen to bad people. People get what they deserve. Moral injury is not PTSD, but it can be very serious and even debilitating. So what is moral injury in war? In the context of war, moral injury may stem from direct participation in acts of combat, such as killing or harming others, or indirect acts such as witnessing death or dying. Unintentional death, unintentional errors. It's closely associated with survivor guilt. It's not the same, but it's connected. That you don't have to have been in combat situations to have experienced, witnessed, or been a part of events that can result in moral injury. So once again, what do? You reach out, you communicate with friends, with therapists, with battle buddies, with vet center staff, with readjustment counselors, with your family, with the church, with workout buddies, with veteran service organizations. And once again, I really want to point out readjustment counselors and vet center staff. These are people whose entire job is talking to people who have experienced deployment, experienced combat, experienced military trauma. Many of them are themselves veterans and combat veterans. They always have combat veterans on staff. So these are people who know where you're coming from. There are people waiting to help and who want you to heal. Find someone to talk to. Go to the CalTAP website. Check on the resources. There are searchable databases. You put in your zip code, you put in what you want to find, and those resources are right there for you. Now let's turn to family. Service changes you, training changes you, deployments change you, coming home changes you, and your family is different and you are different. So while you were deployed, were your parents stressed out? Did your spouse take over all of the family duties and finances? Did your kids have trouble at school? Very likely, the answer to one or more of these questions is yes. Military service and deployment has an enormous impact on families. We have to think about their resilience, your resilience, and all of your healing together. So now that you're back, can you connect emotionally? Is your spouse depressed? Are you depressed? Are your kids okay? There are many studies that show that cumulative lengths of deployments are associated with more emotional difficulties among military children and more mental health diagnoses among U.S. Army wives. Children of deployed military personnel have more school, family, and peer-related difficulties compared to national samples. During and after deployment, older youths experience greater school and peer-related difficulties. Girls experience greater difficulties during the period of reintegration than do boys. And about 1/3 of children report symptoms of anxiety. That's higher than the percentage reported by other students. So you're all different, you've all been through changes and challenges, and you want to reach out for resources for your family as well as yourself. So some of the resources out there are free counseling and services. Some of the places that provide that are Network of Care for Veterans. This is a comprehensive listing of mental health and other resources for service members, veterans, and their families. You can search through and find services in your area. The California County Mental Health Services. Every county has a mental health department. They have mental health resources. You can find links and searchable databases to find the one in your area by going to the CalVet website. The vet centers, they provide family and readjustment counseling. So it's not just you who can get counseling there, your family can. And again, vet centers exist to deal with and help veterans who have been deployed in combat or experienced trauma through their transition and throughout their lives. So they're extremely familiar with these situations and with the resources available. There are also programs out there. Sesame Street for Military Families, this is a terrific program. They provide videos that your kids can watch. They have all the Sesame Street characters, and they talk about military life. They talk about moving. They talk about deployments. They talk about transition. They talk about their family reuniting. And they also have all sorts of information for parents and for teachers and for others who work with the kids to help you build the resiliency in your kids, help talk through perhaps difficult subjects, or address anxiety or other feelings that the children are having. So I can't recommend it enough for people with little ones. And again, the CalVet website has many more resources. They're searchable. You'll also find documents associated with this and other of the CalTAP programs. Service changes you, training changes you, deployments change you, coming home changes you, and it's time to reconnect with community. You've been in a military community, it's a closed community. It has its own language and its own culture. So now that you're separated, what do you do with your time? Now, aside from working or going to school, what do you do with your free time? When you were in the military, most of your time was prescribed for you, and your team was always there, and they had a big impact on what you were doing with your time. Civilian life can be isolating. You're outside of that culture, and you're away from your buddies and your team. So what do you do with your time? You don't want to isolate yourself. You want to find activities, and you want to find ways to address anything that might be going on, like anxiety or depression or stress. And you want to rebuild connections. So seek out veteran-specific and non-veteran-specific organizations and activities. There's a ton of stuff out there. Sports and recreation, the arts, alternative therapies, student life, veterans groups. This is going to help you transition. It's also going to build up your future, your networking, your community. So to tell you about just a few of these types of programs, Team Red, White, and Blue, they exist all over the country. They're chapters. They're both veterans and non-veterans. They get together. They do physical activities like runs and hikes. They also have social activities, and they're really great. People find friends there. You find connections there. You find out about jobs and school and how to navigate the civilian world and have fun doing it. Combat Paper is a really cool arts program. Vets take their uniforms, they break down the fabric, and they make handmade paper out of it, and they can use that for artwork or for writing. It's a really cool process, and the paper is actually really beautiful. But also the time it takes to break down the material, to soak it, to make the paper, is a time when the veterans talk with one another. And again, building that community, not reinventing the wheel, finding out where your friends have been, where your colleagues have been, and how other people are building their civilian lives. And again, there are alternative therapies like equine therapy, the Veterans Yoga Project, an organization here in California started by veterans, and it's Veterans Doing Yoga. Great program. So you can search the web, talk to other vets, and find the best way to engage in healthy community supports. Thank you for joining us for Understanding Resilience, the Brain at War. We've talked about some serious issues here, and there are many more materials that you can look into to learn more about moral injury, family services, stress, and how to build those community connections. We hope you'll take advantage of them and know that CalVet and many community resources are here for you during your transition.